When you think of New York, you probably think of structures like this. Massive bridges or glittering towers of steel and concrete. But New York also has a wilder side. The city's 8 million residents live alongside more than 600 different species of animals. And in this series, we're going to get to know some of the wilder residents of the Big Apple. This is Wild New York.
My name is Ben, and I'm an amateur naturalist and animal lover.
Oh, and there he goes.
Join me and my friend Katie as we journey around New York City and discover a little bit more about the wildlife that shares our home.
The squirrel is by no means an unusual sighting. In fact, next to the pigeon, it's probably the most ubiquitous animal in all of New York City. But there are a few facts about the squirrel that you might not know. For example, how many species of squirrel call New York City home? Where do they live? And just how many squirrels are there in New York? We're going to explore these questions and more today.
The squirrel most commonly seen in New York City is the Squirrel carolinensis, otherwise known as the eastern gray squirrel. In fact, they're so common, they make up more than 80% of all the squirrels you'll find in New York City. Adults tend to be between 9 and 12 inches long and can weigh up to 20 ounces. Despite their name, they can actually come in a variety of colors, including dark gray, a rusty brown color like cinnamon, or even solid black. This difference in color is not due to speciation, but rather a genetic mutation. Their diet consists of nuts, seeds, and berries. The eastern gray squirrel has an incredible sense of smell, and this allows it to find food stores it has buried for later in the winter. Squirrels are incredible jumpers. Thanks to their padded feet and stabilizing bushy tails, they can leap distances of up to 6 feet. They're fast too. On the ground, they can reach speeds of up to 20 miles per hour.
So, just how many squirrels are there in New York City? Well, the jury's still out on the 5 boroughs. But in 2018, an industrious biologist, along with more than 300 volunteers, conducted a Squirrel Census of Central Park. They made note of location, coloration, and the way they interacted with people and other animals. The final verdict? 2,373 unique individuals living here in the heart of Manhattan.
Now, like we said, the eastern gray squirrel makes up the vast majority of squirrels you're going to see in New York City. In fact, the odds that you'll see another species are only about 1 in 5. So, what makes up the rest of that 20%? Well, there's other members of the squirrel family, like chipmunks and woodchucks. However, there is one other species of tree squirrel that lives in Central Park, the Taniacereus hudsonicus, or the American red squirrel.
The red squirrel is, on average, smaller than the eastern gray, but to the naked eye, that's not much use. If you're on your own squirrel hunt, look for these telltale markings. A black stripe separating the upper coat from the lower coat. A bright white ring surrounding the eye. The eastern gray squirrel typically has a white rim around the furrow of the tail, like a halo, whereas the red squirrel has a more solid, thin tail. Armed with this knowledge of their physiology, let's see if we can track down one of these rare squirrels. One of the unwritten rules of film and television is never work with children or animals. Both can be unpredictable, moody, and difficult to wrangle.
Do not go all the way up the tree, little guy. Just wait and let me inspect you.
Although the squirrel is active during the day, in summer they're often only up and about early in the morning. So if you're gonna capture them at their best, it involves a lot of early mornings, long walks through the woods, and patience. Despite more than a month of dawn hunts and Central Park strolls, we didn't find what we were looking for this time around.
Katie, I could be mistaken, but this might be our guy. No black stripe though. It's like kind of an orange. I'm still not seeing the black stripe, unfortunately.
Perhaps later in the fall and winter, when the red squirrels grow their signature ear tufts, we'll be able to spot one.
New York City is home to more than just squirrels with colorful nom de plumes. In fact, there's a squirrel species here even rarer than the American red squirrel. But in order to find it, we're going to have to head uptown.
During the European invasion of the Americas during the 1600s, squirrel populations in Manhattan were thriving, enjoying the hardwood forests that make up their ideal habitat. But like so many species, they fell victim to farmers who viewed them and their destructive habits and diets as pests. In the mid-1800s, a squirrel sighting in New York City was so rare it would draw a crowd. By the 1870s, a decision was made to reintroduce squirrels to the city. And despite cults throughout the next few decades, squirrels were here to stay.
This is Inwood Hill Park, the northernmost park in all of Manhattan. It's also home to the only old-growth forest left on the entire island, with many trees here being well over 100 years old. There's a lot to see, but tonight we're here to look for the rarest tree squirrel species in New York, the flying squirrel. New York City is home to 2 of the 3 flying squirrel species that live in North America, the northern flying squirrel and the southern flying squirrel. Unless you have one in your hand, they're actually pretty difficult to tell apart. The northern flying squirrel is bigger by about 2 to 3 inches and maybe by an ounce or an ounce and a half. Both of these animals are nocturnal and tree dwellers, preferring coniferous trees to the more common deciduous trees that you see in New York City parks. Now, as I said, they're nocturnal animals, so we're probably going to have to camp out and do some night hunting if we ever want to catch one in flight.
Flying squirrels don't actually fly. They glide on special skin membranes called patagiums. On average, they only weigh about 2 ounces, making them the smallest squirrel species in New York. From a height of 100 feet, their gliding speed can reach 20 miles per hour and soar the length of half a football field. Although their habitat spans nearly all of North America, flying squirrel sightings are extremely rare. Their small size, nocturnal habits, and homes high up in the trees keep them safely hidden from human eyes.
This is really frustrating. I can hear them up there moving, but the trees here, some of them are well over 100 feet tall, and I just can't get them on camera right now. We'll see what happens.
With a little luck, we may come across one someday while we seek after another nocturnal animal.
Well, we didn't find what we were looking for tonight, but that's okay. Part of the exciting part about being an amateur naturalist is every time you step outside, there's more to discover. Now that we've met the squirrels of New York City, it's time to ask the important question. How do they fit into the ecosystem? New York has a long and complicated history with squirrels, and they've been viewed as both attraction and nuisance. Opinions tend to vary based on your most recent interaction with them.
Squirrels' teeth grow up to 6 inches per year, and they never stop growing. This means they need to grind them constantly and will use stone, metal, wire, and wood to trim their chompers. Twice, in 1987 and in 1994, mischievous and adventurous squirrels were responsible for shutting down the NASDAQ. A rogue rodent managed to chew its way through the power cable supplying the trading floor. Like their less enjoyable cousins, the rat, squirrels also enjoy our refuse. Food scraps, shiny bits of plastic and metal, they'll chew through it all. But they serve an important ecological function as well. Squirrels bury nuts and seeds, and although they can use their keen sense of smell to find their stores, they often forget where they've buried their treasure. This leads to new sprouts and plantings, helping our forested areas grow. Finally, they fit into the food chain of New York's top predators. From birds of prey like hawks and owls to larger mammals such as foxes and coyotes, the Big Apple's top predators do their part of keeping squirrel populations in line.
Make sure you do your part by properly disposing of your trash, avoid feeding wildlife, and maintaining a safe distance. If you follow these steps, we'll be able to bring New York closer to harmony with nature and keep the concrete jungle a wild New York.
There are a couple burrows over here, so let's see how close we can get.